Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of Homemade Chocolate Truffles in 15 different flavors. I've done a part 1 and 2 video each year for Christmas ever since I started YouTube. If you haven't seen those videos, I'll put links in the description box so you can go check them out. And all of the truffle flavors and their timestamps will be in the description box so you can just jump to the flavor you would like to see. And I'm also not going to be using any molds in this part, so let's get started. In order to make these chocolate truffles, you need to temper chocolate, which means you can only heat it to a certain temperature in order for it to set properly at room temperature. And I have a video showing how to do that in 3 ways, and I'll put a link to it in the description box. For the first flavor, I'm going to show you how to make plain chocolate truffles, and then we'll get into flavors later. First, chop up the chocolate into small pieces. You can use any chocolate you like. I'm using half milk and half dark for this one. And try and use good quality chocolates for the best results. Then add the heavy cream into a small saucepan and heat it on the stove over a medium heat until it starts to come to a boil. Watch it carefully to make sure it doesn't boil over. Once it starts to boil, take it off the heat and pour it over the chopped chocolate. Push the chocolate down so it's all submerged in the heavy cream. And let it sit for 2 minutes so it melts the chocolate. And stir it until it's well combined. Then wrap it in plastic wrap and place it into the fridge for at least 2 hours or overnight until it's firm. Try and chill it for as long as possible so that it sets nice and firm. When it's chilled, it should be this really firm consistency. Then scoop out tablespoon-sized portions and roll them into a ball and place them onto a baking pan lined with parchment paper. If the filling is too soft to roll into balls, just scoop them onto the tray and roll them into balls after freezing them. Just don't leave them in too long or they'll be too hard to roll into balls. Then place them into the freezer for at least 30 minutes or longer until they're really nice and firm. Then dip each one into tempered chocolate. Spoon more chocolate over them so that they're covered. Scoop it out using a fork. Tap off any excess. And place it back onto the parchment paper and let it set. And do that for the rest of them. If your truffles get too soft to work with, you can place them back into the freezer to let them get firm again. Or you can keep the truffles in the freezer and pull them out one at a time to cover them in chocolate. Usually by the time you get to dipping the last few, they will have softened. Once all the truffles are coated, leave them until the chocolate is set. It won't take long since the truffles are already cold. And if your chocolate gets too thick to work with, just heat it up again until it's melted back down, but don't heat it past 93 degrees or it will go out of temper. Once the chocolate is set, you can trim off any excess chocolate from the edges. And that's how to make plain chocolate truffles. Next, we have chocolate wafer cookie truffles, very much like a homemade double chocolate Kit Kat. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. So this recipe makes about 20 to 24 truffles. If you want less, you can half this recipe. So in a small bowl, add in the flour, cocoa powder, baking soda, and kosher salt or any coarse salt you like, and whisk them until they're well combined, and set it aside for now. Then in a larger bowl, add in the softened butter, and beat it with an electric mixer until it's smooth. Then add in the sugar, and beat it in until it's combined. Don't cream the mixture or it will add air into the mixture, which will cause the wafer cookies to rise and spread in the oven. Add in the dry ingredients a little at a time and mix it until it's just combined or almost combined. Once all the dry ingredients are added, mix it until it's just about combined. Then use your hands to bring it together into a ball. Then cut it in half. Place one half onto a sheet of parchment paper. Press it down to flatten it. Place another sheet on top of it. And roll it out until it's 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch thick. Try and make it as thin as possible and make it into a rectangle shape. Then place it into the fridge for 15 to 20 minutes until it's well chilled. When it's well chilled, remove it from the fridge. Peel off the top sheet of parchment paper. Trim each end so that they're straight, but leave them in place. And cut it into 1.5 inch wide strips. Use a ruler to make sure they're even. And bake it in the oven for about 15 minutes. When you first pull it out of the oven, it will be quite soft, but it will get crisp as it cools. Immediately cut along the lines while it's still hot and soft so that the pieces don't stick together. Then leave it to cool completely. Then carefully pull apart the strips. Place one strip onto a sheet of parchment paper. Spread on a thin layer of chocolate. Add another strip on top. Spread on more chocolate. And continue layering the rest of them. And don't worry if any break, just stick them onto the melted chocolate. Then place it into the fridge for about 10 minutes until the chocolate is set. Then remove it from the fridge and cut it up into bite-sized pieces. Then dip them into tempered chocolate. Spoon more chocolate over them so that they're completely covered. Scoop it out using a fork. Tap off any excess. Place it back onto the parchment paper and leave it to set. Then just do that for the rest of them. And that's how to make chocolate wafer cookie truffles. Next, we have peanut butter M&M truffles, a sweet and creamy peanut butter filling with M&Ms. In a small bowl, add in the peanut butter and powdered sugar and mix them together until they're combined. It will take a while, but keep mixing and they will come together. Then add in the mini M&Ms. Mix them in with a spoon at first. Then use your hands to bring it together into a ball. Then roll the mixture into tablespoon-sized balls and place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper. And place them into the fridge or freezer until they're cold and firm. It shouldn't need too much time because the mixture is already firm. Then remove it from the fridge or freezer. Cover them in tempered chocolate. Place them back onto the pan and sprinkle it with more M&Ms before the chocolate sets. And do that for the rest of them. And that's how to make peanut butter M&M truffles. Next, we have cookies and cream truffles, a creamy white chocolate ganache with crushed Oreo cookies. Pour the hot, heavy cream over the chopped white chocolate. Push the chocolate down so it's all submerged. And leave it for 2 minutes. Then stir it until it's well combined. Then crush up the Oreos in a bag using a rolling pin. Try not to crush them too fine. and pour it into the white chocolate ganache. Mix it until it's combined. Wrap it in plastic wrap and place it in the fridge for at least 2 hours or overnight until it's really nice and firm. Then remove it from the fridge and roll them into tablespoon-sized balls and place them onto a tray lined with parchment paper, or you can just scoop the filling onto the tray and roll them into balls after freezing them. Then place them into the freezer until they're really nice and firm. Then remove them from the freezer, roll them into balls if needed, cover them in tempered chocolate, scoop it out with a fork, tap off the excess, place it back onto the parchment paper, and sprinkle some crushed Oreos on top of it before the chocolate sets. Then do that for the rest of them. And that's how to make cookies and cream truffles. Next, we have mint chocolate chip truffles, a white chocolate ganache infused with real fresh mint and mini chocolate chips. In a small saucepan, add in the heavy cream and fresh mint leaves, breaking them up as you add them. And place it onto the stove until it comes to a boil, stirring it or swirling the pan so it heats evenly. Once it's boiling, remove it from the heat and let it sit for at least 20 minutes to let the mint flavor infuse into the heavy cream. Then place it back onto the stove and heat it until it comes to a boil again. Then remove it from the heat and pour it through a sieve over the chopped white chocolate. Press down firmly on the mint leaves to release more flavor. Push down the chocolate so it's all submerged. Let it sit for 2 minutes and mix them until they're combined. If there are still lumps, heat the mixture in the microwave until they're melted. And color it green. You can use any food coloring for ganache. It doesn't have to be oil-based or powdered. If the mint flavor is too subtle, you can add in some mint extracts to enhance the flavor. Then wrap it in plastic wrap and place it into the fridge for at least 2 hours or overnight until it's firm. Then remove it from the fridge. Add in the mini chocolate chips. Mix them until they're thoroughly combined. We don't add the chocolate chips before chilling it because the warm mixture can melt them and the chocolate chips sink to the bottom while it's chilling. Scoop it onto a tray lined with parchment paper and place them into the freezer until they're nice and firm. Then roll them into balls. Cover them in tempered chocolate and place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. And do that for the rest of them. And I'm adding some tempered white chocolates that I colored green on top of them. You can decorate the top however you like, just make each truffle look different so you know which ones are which. And that's how to make mint chocolate chip truffles. Next, we have cookie dough Reese's Pieces truffles, a homemade edible cookie dough with mini chocolate chips and Reese's Pieces, and each truffle has a peanut butter cup in the middle. You first need to heat treat the flour so it's safe to eat. So add the flour into a skillet and heat it on the stove over a medium heat until it reaches 160 degrees or above, stirring it occasionally. Then take it off the heat and pour it into a separate bowl to help it cool quickly, and set it aside and let it cool completely. Then in a small or medium bowl, add in the softened butter, sugar, and brown sugar, and whisk them for about a minute until they lighten in color. Then add in the milk and vanilla extract and whisk them in until they're combined. Then add in the cooled heat-treated flour, salt, mini chocolate chips, and Reese's Pieces, and mix them until they're combined. Then scoop them onto a pan lined with parchment paper. Place a mini peanut butter cup into the center of each one. Roll it into a ball. Place it back onto the pan. And do that for the rest of them. Then place them into the freezer until they're nice and firm. Once they're firm, remove them from the freezer. Cover each one in tempered chocolate. Place it back onto the parchment paper and add some Reese's Pieces on top before the chocolate sets. And that's how to make cookie dough Reese's Pieces truffles. Next, we have peanut butter ball truffles, a creamy and sweet peanut butter filling with Rice Krispies for crunch. In a medium bowl, add in the softened butter and peanut butter, and mix them until they're combined. Then add in the powdered sugar and Rice Krispies, and mix them until they're well combined. Then scoop them out onto a pan lined with parchment paper, roll them into balls, and place them into the freezer until they're firm. Then remove them from the freezer. Cover them in tempered chocolate. I'm using half milk and half dark chocolate for this one. You can use whatever chocolate you like. Place it back onto the parchment paper and leave it to set. And do that for the rest of them. And to make them look different from other truffles, I'm drizzling some tempered dark chocolate on top of them. And that's how to make peanut butter ball truffles. Next, we have strawberry kiwi truffles. Fresh strawberry and kiwi puree mixed with white chocolates, giving it a sweet and slightly tart flavor. Wash the strawberries, then pat them dry, and cut off the green part. Then add them into a food processor. Then wash the kiwis, cut off each end, peel them using a vegetable peeler, and cut them into chunks. Add them into the food processor with the strawberries, and blend them until they're smooth. Then pass it through a fine sieve into a small saucepan. It will take a while for it to go through. Just keep pushing until most of the puree is through. Then place the saucepan onto the stove over a medium heat and heat it until it comes to a boil. Stir it occasionally so it heats evenly. Then keep it boiling over medium heat until it reduces and thickens, which will take about 20 to 30 minutes. Stir it occasionally so it heats evenly and to keep it from burning at the bottom. Heating it to reduce it helps evaporate the water in the fruit, and it concentrates the flavor, so you can use less to flavor more for your truffles. You don't want too much liquid in your ganache or it will make it come out soft. And you need to keep heating it until it reduces to half a cup. So pour it into a liquid measuring cup, and if it measures more than half a cup, keep boiling it until it does. Once it has reduced to half a cup, take it off the heat and pour a quarter cup of it into the white chocolate, or you can use double the chocolate and add all of the puree into it. Stir it until it's touching all the chocolate, and let it sit for 2 minutes. Then stir it until the chocolate is melted. If there are still lumps when it has cooled down, microwave it to melt the lumps. Then wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least an hour or overnight. Then remove it from the fridge, Roll it into tablespoon-sized balls and place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper and place them into the freezer until they're nice and firm. Then remove them from the freezer, cover them in tempered chocolate, place it back onto the pan, and leave it to set. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate that I colored pink on top of them. And that's how to make strawberry kiwi truffles. Next, we have raspberry lemon truffles, a really fresh, tart, and sweet raspberry and lemon truffle. Wash the raspberries and add them into a small saucepan. Then add in the lemon zest and lemon juice and place it onto the stove over a medium heat. Stir it to combine the ingredients and heat it until the mixture boils and the raspberries break down. Then add in some sugar to sweeten it. Then continue heating it until it reduces and thickens, which will take about 15 to 20 minutes. You'll know it's ready when it's thick, and when you pour it into a liquid measuring cup, it should measure 3/4 of a cup. So when it's ready, remove it from the heat and pour it through a fine sieve to strain out the seeds and the lemon zest, pushing as much of the liquid through as possible. Scrape off the bottom of the sieve and add in the chopped white chocolate and mix it until the chocolate is melted. Heat it in the microwave if there are still lumps. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least 2 hours or overnight. Then remove it from the fridge. Roll it into tablespoon-sized balls and place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper, or just scoop them onto the pan and roll them into balls after freezing them, which you might want to do because the filling is a bit softer. And place it into the freezer until they're firm. Then remove it from the freezer. Roll them into balls if needed. Place them back into the freezer to firm up again. And for this filling, I'm leaving them in the freezer and taking them out one at a time so the truffles stay firm while I'm covering them in chocolate. So cover each truffle in tempered chocolate. Place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate colored red over these truffles. And that's how to make raspberry lemon truffles. Next, we have cranberry orange walnut truffles. Cranberry and orange is a great combination, and I've also seen cranberry and walnuts together. So I've combined them both to make this truffle, and it turned out really good. Better than I thought, actually. Wash the cranberries and add them into a small saucepan. And add in the sugar, orange zest, and orange juice. Place the saucepan onto the stove over a medium heat. Stir the ingredients to combine them. And heat it until the mixture comes to a boil and the cranberries break down. Then keep it boiling over the heat until it really thickens, which will take about 10 to 20 minutes. Once it's really thickened, remove it from the heat and add in the chopped white chocolate and mix it in until it's melted into the mixture. And if you want it completely smooth, you can pass it through a sieve, pushing as much of it through as possible. And add in the chopped walnuts. You can leave them out if you don't like walnuts, it's good either way. And mix them in until they're combined. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least 2 hours or overnight. Then remove it from the fridge, roll it into tablespoon-sized balls or roll them into balls after freezing them, and place them into the freezer until they're firm. And since there's so many of these truffles, I'm keeping them in the freezer and taking them out one at a time. So cover each truffle in tempered chocolate and place it onto parchment paper and sprinkle on some chopped walnuts before the chocolate sets. And I'm also drizzling some white chocolate colored red over these too. And that's how to make cranberry orange walnut truffles. Next we have lemon basil truffles, a lemony ganache filling with a hint of fresh basil. I got inspired by this truffle from culinary school. We made lemon basil ice cream and it was really good. I've decided to make it into truffles. In a small saucepan, add in the heavy cream, lemon zest, and fresh basil, breaking them up as you add them. And place it onto the stove over medium heat and heat it until it starts to boil. Then remove it from the heat and let it sit for at least 20 minutes to let the flavors infuse. Then place it back onto the stove and heat it until it boils again. Then remove it from the heat and pour it through a sieve over the chopped white chocolate. Press down to release more flavor. Add in the lemon juice and stir it until it's combined and all the chocolate is melted. And heat it in the microwave if there are still lumps. And for extra flavor, add in a little more lemon zest. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least 2 hours or overnight. Then remove it from the fridge. Roll it into tablespoon-sized balls. Place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper. And freeze them until they're firm. Cover each one in tempered white chocolate. Place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate colored yellow on top of them. And that's how to make lemon basil truffles. Next we have peach mango truffles, made with peach and mango puree and a little heavy cream for a creamy flavor. You can use fresh or frozen peaches and mangoes. I'm using frozen because fresh peaches are hard to find at this time of year, and so I don't have to wait for the mangoes to ripen. So if you're using frozen, you need to let them thaw completely. Then strain out the liquid. Add them into a food processor or blender, and blend them until they're smooth. If you're using fresh peaches and mangoes, you may need to add in a little water to help them blend easier. And you can choose to keep the lumps left or pass it through a sieve to get it completely smooth. Just keep pushing until as much of the puree is through as possible. Place the saucepan onto the stove over a medium heat and heat it until it comes to a boil, stirring it occasionally. Once it's boiling, keep it boiling over the heat for about another 15 minutes until it reduces and thickens, stirring it occasionally to make sure it's heating evenly and to keep it from burning at the bottom. It's done when it's thick and dark like this, so remove it from the heat, add in the chopped white chocolate, and mix it until it's all melted. Then add in the heavy cream, and mix it in until it's well combined. Pour it into a separate bowl, wrap it in plastic wrap, and refrigerate it for at least 2 hours or overnight until it's firm. Then remove it from the fridge, roll it into tablespoon-sized balls, place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper, and place them into the freezer until they're really firm. Then cover each one in tempered white chocolate and place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let the chocolate set. And I'm drizzling some chocolate-colored orange on top of them. And that's how to make peach mango truffles. Next, we have orange cream truffles, a nice and creamy orange ganache filling. Grate the zest of the oranges into a small saucepan. Make sure you're only getting the orange part and not the whites because the white will make it taste bitter. And juice the oranges into the saucepan. and place it onto the stove over a medium-high heat and heat it until it boils. Then you need to keep it boiling until it reduces in size and thickens. It will bubble up a lot, so keep picking up the pan and swirl it in circles to see how much it has reduced. Once it's reduced and thick like this, remove it from the heat. Pour it through a fine sieve to strain out the zest, and press firmly on the zest to release a stronger orange flavor. Measure out the juice, and you should only be left with a 1/4 cup of juice. So if it measures more than a 1/4 cup, pour it back into the saucepan and boil it a little longer until there's a 1/4 cup of juice. It's fine if it measures less than a 1/4 cup, the filling might just set a little firmer. Then once it's reduced to a 1/4 cup, pour it over the chopped white chocolate and add in the heavy cream and mix them until they're combined and the chocolate is melted. Microwave it if there are still lumps. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for at least 2 hours or overnight until it's firm. Then remove it from the fridge. Roll it into tablespoon-sized balls. Place them onto a pan lined with parchment paper and place them into the freezer until they're nice and solid. Then cover each one in tempered chocolate. Place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate-colored orange on top of them. And that's how to make orange cream truffles. Next, we have caramel apple truffles. Caramel and apples go so well together, so why not make them into truffles? Wash an apple and peel it. Then core and dice it into small cubes. Add it into a small saucepan. Add in the water and place it onto the stove over a medium heat. Stir the ingredients to combine them. Place the lid on top and heat it until the apples are cooked through. Then remove the lid and continue heating it until all the excess liquid evaporates. Try not to heat it until the apple's brown. Then add in the caramel sauce. I'm using my homemade caramel sauce that I showed how to make in one of my videos a couple months ago. I'll link to that video in the description box. So just mix it in until it's combined. Then remove it from the heat and add in the chopped white chocolate and mix it until it's all melted. Pour it into a small bowl. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it until it's firm. Then remove it from the fridge. Scoop it onto a pan lined with parchment paper, or if yours is set firmer, you can roll it into balls. And place it into the freezer until they're nice and firm. Then just cover each one in tempered chocolate. And place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate on top of them. And that's how to make caramel apple truffles. And last we have passion fruit truffles, a great passion fruit ganache filling that's perfectly sweet and tart. So fresh passion fruits are really hard to find here in the USA, but I was able to buy them online and I'll put a link in the description box. So there's 2 types of passion fruits. There's purple passion fruits, which is what I have here, and there's also yellow passion fruits, which are bigger and a bit milder in flavor. And I also found this frozen passion fruit puree from Whole Foods. They're just these small cubes of passion fruit puree. So you can use either the fresh passion fruits or the frozen puree for the truffles. I'm choosing to go with the fresh passion fruits. So passion fruits are best when they're really wrinkly like this. It's a bit sweeter when it is. If it's not very wrinkly, it's really tart, almost as tart as lemons. So what you need to do is cut them in half and scoop out the insides into a fine sieve over a liquid measuring cup. And you need to strain out the seeds and the pulp and have just the juice go through. And just keep going until you have half a cup of juice. Pour the juice into a small saucepan and place it onto the stove over a medium heat and heat it until it boils. When it's boiling, keep it boiling until it reduces and thickens. And you need to keep boiling it until there's only a 1/4 cup of liquid. So once it's boiled down to a 1/4 cup, remove it from the heat and add in the chopped white chocolate and mix it until it's all melted. Pour it into a small bowl, wrap it in plastic wrap, and refrigerate it until it's firm. Then remove it from the fridge. Scoop tablespoon-sized balls onto a pan lined with parchment paper and place them into the freezer until they're firm. Then just cover them in tempered white chocolate and place it onto a sheet of parchment paper and let it set. If there are any holes, you can just fill them in with more chocolate. And I'm drizzling some white chocolate colored blue on top of them. And that's how to make passion fruit truffles. And I'm placing each of these truffles into a box, so it's like a box of chocolates. And that's part 3 of homemade chocolate truffles in 15 different flavors. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I have so many more on my channel, so be sure to check them out and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.